What happens when a lie meant to save a marriage becomes the reason it's destroyed in front of everyone? I thought one little secret would fix everything, that a baby could glue us back together. But when the DNA test arrived, my husband didn't shout. He simply smiled, and I knew I'd lost everything before the court even spoke. When Adam left for that business trip, I told everyone I was fine. I even told him not to worry, that I'd keep busy with work and maybe visit my sister. He smiled the way he always did, polite, quiet, like he didn't want to argue, and kissed my forehead before leaving. That's the kind of husband he was. Predictable, reliable, boring. The first few days were peaceful. The house stayed clean, no arguments about schedules or spending. But the silence started to bother me. I'd sit on the couch at night scrolling through pictures of us, wondering when we stopped feeling like a couple and started feeling like roommates. He was always somewhere else, meetings, flights, deadlines. I told myself I understood, that his job paid for our comfort, but deep down, I felt invisible. Then there was Darren. He worked in the office 2 floors down, always joking, always noticing things. He'd say I looked tired, that I deserved a break, that Adam was lucky to have someone like me. I knew it was wrong to like the attention, but it felt nice to be seen again. It started with lunches, then after-work drinks, and one evening, it went further than either of us planned. I told myself it was nothing, just a mistake, something I'd forget. When Adam called from overseas, his voice sounded softer than usual. He said he missed me. I said I missed him too, smiling into the dark while Darren's message flashed on my phone. That was the first real lie. Weeks later, when I found out I was pregnant, everything froze. I stared at the test in disbelief. My hands were shaking, but a strange relief followed, like maybe this could fix things. Maybe the baby would pull Adam closer again. He loved children. He'd forgive anything for the sake of family. I didn't think about timing, not at first. Then I counted the days. The dates didn't match, not even close. Still, when Adam came home, I smiled, held his hands, and said, "You're going to be a father." And when his eyes filled with tears, I told myself it wasn't really a lie. It was just love, in a different form. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The night Adam left for Singapore, I felt proud of myself for not crying. I stood by the doorway, watching him load his suitcase into the taxi, thinking how calm I looked. He waved once before getting in. Like always, no drama, no promises, just that quiet steadiness that used to comfort me and now made me feel small. When the car disappeared down the street, the house felt too big. The silence wrapped around me like cold air. I turned on the TV, poured a glass of wine, and told myself I'd enjoy the peace. The first few days were easy. I went to work, stayed late, met friends for dinner. I posted a few photos online of me-time moments, coffee cups, candles, little updates that made me look happy. Adam texted every night before bed. "How's my girl?" he wrote once. I said, "Busy, but fine." I didn't ask about his meetings. He didn't ask much either. Darren started appearing more often around that time. He worked in logistics, one of the departments I managed, and he had that effortless charm that pulled people in. He made jokes during meetings, offered to grab coffee, and always remembered details. What I liked, what annoyed me, what music I listened to. One afternoon, he said I looked tired. I told him Adam was away again, and he smiled, saying, "You must get lonely." I laughed it off, but that night I thought about his tone. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, like he understood something Adam never did. By the end of the week, Darren invited me to join a group from work at a nearby hotel bar. I told myself it was harmless, just networking, but when I arrived, it wasn't a group, it was just him. He said the others cancelled last minute. I could have left, but I didn't. He talked about how dull office life was, how people lost themselves in routines. I found myself agreeing. I told him Adam worked too much, that he was married to his job. Darren smiled, saying, "Maybe he takes you for granted." That sentence hung in my head for days. The next time Adam called, he sounded exhausted. He said the meetings were long, that he'd try to bring me something nice from duty-free. I said, "Just come home in one piece." He laughed quietly. Then he asked if I'd been going out much. I said, "Just with friends." I didn't tell him one of those friends was sitting across from me, watching me talk. It happened the following weekend, after a late night at the office. Everyone else had gone home except Darren. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner, and I said yes before thinking. It rained the whole time, and we laughed about how soaked we were by the time we got to the restaurant. I remember telling him how predictable my life felt, how everything ran on schedules. He said, "Maybe you need something unexpected." When I woke up the next morning, the light through the curtains felt sharp, like a punishment. Darren was already gone. There was a note on the counter that said, "You deserve to feel alive." I tore it up before leaving the apartment. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a moment of weakness. I took a long shower, deleted his number, and went back to pretending everything was fine. When Adam called that evening, I said, "I miss you." He said he missed me too, and I almost believed him. 2 weeks later, my period was late. I didn't think much of it at first, but after a few more days, I bought a test. I remember standing in the bathroom, waiting for the result, my hands cold against the sink. When the 2 lines appeared, I sat down on the floor. I should have felt fear, but instead I felt relief. A baby meant hope. A baby meant forgiveness before the confession. I calculated the timing in my head. Dates, flight numbers, everything. The math didn't work. I did it again. It still didn't fit. My heart pounded as I realized what it meant. When Adam came home the following week, he looked tired but happy. He wrapped his arms around me and said it was good to be back. I smiled and pressed my face against his chest. He smelled like airports and aftershave. That night, over dinner, I told him I had news. He looked up from his plate, his eyes curious and warm. "You're going to be a father," I said. He froze for a second, then smiled, a slow, genuine smile that melted something inside me. "Really?" he asked. I nodded quickly. I didn't plan to cry, but the tears came anyway. He reached for my hand. "This is the best thing you've ever told me," he said softly. I smiled, but the guilt pressed against my ribs like a stone. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. He loved me. He wanted this. And as long as I never said anything, it would be true. The first few weeks after I told Adam felt like living inside a dream that wasn't mine. He became gentle again, carrying groceries, calling from work to check if I'd eaten, planning doctor visits. I'd never seen him so attentive. Every touch, every word of care made me feel both cherished and trapped. I wanted to believe I deserved it, but every time he smiled, the lie sat heavier in my chest. He started making lists, baby names, room colors, budgets. He even told his mother, Evelyn, before I was ready. She called the next day, her voice sharp with excitement but edged with suspicion. "It's wonderful news," she said, "though a bit sudden, isn't it?" I forced a laugh. We'd been trying for a while. She hummed, unconvinced. I could almost hear her taking mental notes. Maya, my sister, was the opposite. She squealed when I told her and immediately said it was fate. "You needed this," she said. "It'll bring you and Adam closer again." I wanted to believe her. I wanted that so badly that I started repeating it out loud, as if saying it enough could make it real. At work, Darren avoided me. He'd started eating lunch at his desk and leaving early. The first time I saw him in the hallway, he nodded politely like we were strangers. That should have made things easier, but it only made me angrier. He got to walk away clean while I was stuck pretending. One afternoon, I cornered him near the elevators. You're not even going to ask how I'm doing, I said. He looked pale. Celine, please don't start this here. I said quietly, I'm pregnant. His eyes widened. Then he said, You need to talk to your husband. That was all. He didn't ask if it was his. He didn't have to. That night, Adam came home early with a bouquet of lilies, my favorite. He said he'd booked our first ultrasound appointment for next week. His excitement was so pure it almost broke me. I smiled and hugged him, hiding the shaking in my hands. When I told Maya about it later, she said, You should stop overthinking. You're giving this baby a good home. That's what matters. But the next morning, when I went to the doctor, the timeline came up. The nurse asked the usual questions. Last cycle, conception window. And then she frowned slightly at the chart. You're measuring around 7 weeks, she said. I nodded quickly, pretending to follow along. Adam had been gone almost the entire time. I felt my stomach twist. That night, over dinner, I tried to bring it up carefully. The doctor said I might be a week further along than we thought. I said lightly. Adam just smiled. Then we must have gotten lucky before I left, he said. I nodded and forced a laugh. He reached for my hand. I told you this baby was meant to be. After that, the guilt came in waves. Every lie I told him built another wall. I started compensating, making his favorite meals, planning date nights, sending him photos of baby items. He said he'd never felt closer to me. The words should have comforted me, but instead they felt like proof that I'd trapped both of us inside a story that couldn't last. Evelyn came to visit one afternoon while Adam was at work. She brought soup and a tiny white blanket she'd knitted. I thanked her, but she stayed standing by the counter, watching me too carefully. I've known Adam a long time, she said. He believes what people tell him, sometimes too much. I asked what she meant. She smiled faintly. Just that honesty isn't about words. It's about timing. Then she picked up her purse and left. The next week, Adam suggested inviting both families for dinner. He wanted to share the news together, to make it official. I agreed because saying no would have looked strange. The evening started well, everyone smiling, congratulating, toasting. But halfway through, Evelyn mentioned something about the conception dates. You said he left mid-April, right? She asked. Adam nodded proudly. Evelyn smiled thinly. So you must have found out right away. That's wonderful. The table went quiet. I felt everyone's eyes on me. Maya jumped in, saying I'd probably known before Adam even left. I laughed too loudly, waving my hand. You all are overanalyzing. Babies don't follow calendars. Everyone chuckled awkwardly, but I could feel the doubt spreading like smoke. After dinner, Adam and I cleaned up in silence. I waited for him to say something, but he just loaded the dishwasher. Finally, he said softly, Mom worries too much. I asked if he believed her. He looked at me for a moment, then smiled. No, I trust you. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. The word trust repeated in my head until it sounded like a threat. 2 days later, when he came home from work, he looked thoughtful. I've been thinking, he said, just to make sure we're both calm and confident, why don't we do a paternity test? For peace of mind. I froze. You're serious? He nodded gently. It's not about doubt. I just want to be sure everything's right. I smiled tightly and said, Of course, if it makes you feel better. He leaned over, kissed my forehead, and said, That's my girl. But when he went upstairs, I felt the blood drain from my face, because for the first time, I realized he wasn't questioning me. He was testing how far I'd go to keep lying. The morning after Adam mentioned the test, I tried to act normal. I made pancakes, smiled, kissed him goodbye like nothing had changed. But the entire time, I was scanning his face for clues. Was he suspicious? Angry? Planning something? He was just calm, too calm, and that made it worse. Before he left, he said, I'll schedule it through my doctor this week. His tone was gentle, polite, but it made my stomach tighten. At work, I could barely focus. Every email looked blurry. People were whispering more than usual, and I felt their eyes on me. Darren was gone, transferred to another branch suddenly. No one said why, but I could guess. The timing was too neat. Someone must have talked. I told myself no one could connect us, but guilt has a way of making every silence feel like accusation. At lunch, my co-worker Hannah leaned over and said quietly, "I heard Darren quit. You two were close, right?" I forced a smile and said, "We work together. That's all." She shrugged, unconvinced, and went back to her salad. The rest of the afternoon felt endless. That night, Adam came home with takeout. He set it on the table like it was any other evening. "Doctor says we can do the test any time," he said casually. I asked if he really thought it was necessary. He smiled. "It's just a formality, Celine. Something we'll laugh about later." I nodded, pretending to agree, but his eyes lingered too long on mine. Over the next few days, I tried everything to distract him. I planned a small dinner, invited Maya and her boyfriend. I cooked his favorite meal, set candles, smiled until my cheeks hurt. During dinner, I made jokes about pregnancy cravings, about baby names. Everyone laughed except him. He just watched, calm and polite, like someone memorizing every detail. After they left, I finally asked him if something was wrong. He said, "No, I'm just thinking about responsibility." I asked what that meant. He said, "Making sure we build this family on truth." I snapped, saying he was being paranoid, that stress could hurt the baby. He didn't react. "Then let's make it quick," he said softly. "The sooner we test, the sooner we can rest." I went upstairs and slammed the door. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see anger. I saw fear. Because deep down, I knew this was the moment everything would start falling apart. The next morning, Evelyn called. "Adam told me about the test," she said calmly. "That's smart of him." I tried to sound offended. "He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone." She laughed lightly. "If you're so sure, then what's the harm?" I hung up before she could say more. A week later, we went to the clinic. I kept telling myself there was still a chance, that miracles happen, that maybe the timing could somehow line up. Adam held my hand during the appointment, smiling like a man trying to comfort a frightened child. I wanted to hate him for being so composed. Afterward, he kissed my forehead and said, "No matter what happens, I'll take care of you." The words sounded kind, but something inside me twisted. They didn't sound like love. They sounded like goodbye. The days waiting for the results were unbearable. Adam acted as if nothing had changed. Same routine, same calm tone. I'd catch him on the phone sometimes, speaking quietly. When I asked who it was, he said, "Just work," but he was never on calls that long before. Then, one morning, a white envelope arrived by courier, addressed to him. I knew immediately what it was. He placed it on the kitchen counter, untouched, and poured himself a coffee. "You're not going to open it?" I asked. He said, "I already know what it says." I froze. "You don't." He looked at me for a moment, then smiled. "Do I need to?" I wanted to scream, to snatch it from his hands, to tear it apart before he could see. But instead, I laughed weakly and said, "You're ridiculous." He nodded, taking a slow sip. "Maybe." He went upstairs, leaving the envelope behind. I sat there staring at it, hands trembling. I thought about burning it, hiding it, doing anything. But a small voice in my head whispered that it was already too late, that he wouldn't have ordered the test if he didn't already know. That evening, Maya came over. I told her about the envelope, about how he hadn't opened it yet. She looked uneasy. "Celine, maybe you should just tell him the truth," she said. I shook my head. "He won't forgive me." "Maybe not," she said, "but at least you'd still have some dignity." The next day, Adam texted me from work. "Dinner tonight. Just us. We should talk." My heart dropped. I stared at the message until the words blurred. That night, I set the table, lit candles, tried to make everything look perfect. When he arrived, he was calm, polite, and silent. We ate quietly. Then he slid the same envelope across the table. "You should see it too," he said. I didn't touch it. "We don't need to," I said. He leaned back, his voice low but steady. "It's not mine, Selene. I read it this morning." My breath caught. He didn't look angry. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked free, and that somehow was worse than anything he could have shouted. I didn't remember much after he said it, just the sound of my fork clattering onto the plate, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and Adam's voice, steady, calm, final. I tried to speak, to ask how he could be so sure, but he just looked at me like someone watching a storm through glass. "It's not mine," he repeated, softer this time, almost like a confession instead of an accusation. Then he stood up, gathered the dishes, and began cleaning. I followed him into the kitchen, my words tumbling over each other. "Tests can be wrong," I said. "You know that, right? Mistakes happen." He rinsed a plate and said, "They don't make this kind of mistake, Selena." His calmness frightened me more than anger ever could. I needed him to yell, to break something, to show me there was still something left to fix. But he just kept washing dishes, methodical as always, as if he'd practiced for this moment. When he finished, he turned off the faucet and faced me. "I already spoke to my lawyer," he said. "You'll get the papers soon." "Lawyer?" My voice cracked. "You're ending our marriage over this?" He tilted his head slightly. "You ended it. I'm just making it official." I felt the room tilt. I reached for him, trying to take his hand, but he stepped back. "Please," I said. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." He nodded slowly. "I know, that's the problem." He went upstairs, leaving me standing in the kitchen surrounded by the faint scent of detergent and the weight of my own silence. I didn't follow him. I just sank to the floor and stared at the envelope still lying open on the counter. The words inside burned into my mind. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. The closet looked half empty. I found his wedding ring on the bathroom counter, next to his watch. It wasn't thrown or hidden. It was placed neatly, like everything else he did. There was a note beside it. "Don't call me today. I need space to think." I called Maya anyway. She came over within an hour, her face pale and serious. I told her everything, about Darren, about the test, about Adam's lawyer. She didn't interrupt until I finished. Then she said, "You should have told the truth before it came to this." I snapped at her. "You think I wanted this to happen? I was trying to save us." She sighed. "You can't save something by lying to it, Celine." We argued until she left, slamming the door behind her. I sat alone in the quiet, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Vacations, birthdays, smiling faces that already looked like strangers. By afternoon, the first message came from Evelyn. "I always hoped I was wrong about you." That was all it said. I didn't reply. Then came the second, this time from Adam's lawyer, confirming a meeting for the following week. The subject line read, "Petition for divorce and custody determination." When Adam came home that night, he didn't look at me. He packed a small bag from the hall closet. "Where are you going?" I asked. "To my mother's," he said simply. "For how long?" He zipped the bag, slung it over his shoulder, and said, "Until I don't need to lie to myself anymore." I followed him to the door, begging, pleading, trying to explain. I told him Darren didn't matter, that I didn't even love him, that I only made a mistake because I felt alone. He turned back, his expression calm but distant. "You keep saying alone," he said, "but you were never alone. You just wanted someone else to see you when I already did." He walked out and I didn't try to stop him. The door closed softly, and I stood there listening to his footsteps fade. Over the next few days, I tried to fix what couldn't be fixed. I called him, texted him, Even showed up at his mother's house once. Evelyn opened the door, but didn't let me in. "He's not ready to see you," she said. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was final. At work, people whispered when I walked by. Someone must have talked about the test. Darren had already vanished. HR said he'd taken a leave of absence. When I asked for how long, they just shrugged. At home, the silence became unbearable. I started sleeping on the couch, leaving the bedroom untouched. The nursery we'd planned looked ridiculous now. The half-painted walls, the unopened boxes of baby clothes. I thought about calling Maya again, but I knew what she'd say. Then, one evening, a courier arrived with a large envelope. Inside were official documents, divorce papers, a proposed custody arrangement, and a letter from Adam's lawyer. The last line read, "Mr. Ward will continue to provide for the child's welfare until the court determines parentage and guardianship." That night, I tore up the letter, but it didn't change anything. Adam wasn't fighting me anymore. He didn't have to. He'd already won by stepping away without anger, by letting the truth do the work. And the cruelest part was how quiet it all was. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the echo of everything I'd built on lies, finally collapsing under its own weight. The day of the legal meeting felt like walking into a room where everyone already knew the ending, but wanted to hear me say it out loud. I dressed carefully, choosing a pale blue blouse. The one Adam once said made me look trustworthy. I don't know why I bothered. Nothing I wore could make the truth look better. When I arrived, Adam was already there, sitting beside his lawyer, calm as ever. He looked rested, almost peaceful. I hated how collected he seemed. My lawyer whispered that we'd keep things civil. I nodded, pretending I could. But the moment I saw the documents spread across the table, copies of messages, bank statements, even my own doctor's notes, I felt my stomach twist. Adam had come prepared for everything. The mediator began with her polite, practiced tone, going over the terms. "Mr. Ward has filed for dissolution of marriage on grounds of paternity fraud," she said, her eyes flicking briefly to me. "He's requested full custody and exclusive ownership of the marital property." I wanted to interrupt, to defend myself, but my throat felt dry. Adam sat quietly, listening as his lawyer presented everything: timeline inconsistencies, the DNA results, even testimonies from co-workers who'd overheard gossip. There were printed screenshots from my messages to Maya, where I'd confessed to feeling guilty but justified. Seeing my own words turned into evidence made me want to disappear. When it was finally my turn to speak, I said the only thing I could. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." My voice cracked halfway through. The mediator nodded politely, but no one else responded. Adam just looked at me with that same unreadable calm. I tried to appeal to reason. "Adam, please. We can fix this. We can raise this baby together." He said quietly, "You've already made sure that's not possible." I leaned forward. "You think ending everything will make it easier for the baby? He needs stability." Adam's voice didn't waver. "He needs honesty. I'll make sure he has that, even if it's not from you." His lawyer handed me a sheet of paper, custody arrangements. I scanned the words, my hands trembling. Full paternal custody pending review. There was a clause about visitation rights, but even that felt like charity. I looked up and asked, "You really think I don't deserve to see my own child?" Adam looked at me, his tone measured but heavy. "You deserve the truth, Celine. The child deserves peace. They're not the same thing." I felt the words hit like a slap. My lawyer whispered that we could negotiate, but Adam shook his head. "I'm not negotiating over betrayal," he said. Evelyn entered the room halfway through the session, sitting quietly behind him. I didn't even know she'd be there. She didn't speak, didn't glare, just watched. Her presence was enough to make me feel smaller. When the meeting ended, she stood, touched Adam's shoulder, and said softly, "Let's go home." Before he left, Adam turned to me. "You'll get the finalized papers in a few days," he said. I'll make sure you're taken care of financially, but that's all I can offer. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. He paused, as if waiting for me to say something meaningful, something honest. I stayed silent. He nodded once and walked out. After they left, my lawyer sighed. "He's composed, but he's done," she said. "He's not looking for revenge. He just wants closure." That word, closure, felt cruel. It sounded too clean, too gentle for what it meant. When I got home, the house looked emptier than before. Adam's things were gone completely now. Only my clothes, the baby books, and the half-painted nursery remained. On the table, a single white envelope waited with my name written in his handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a note and a folded photo of the ultrasound. The note read, "I hope you'll still choose to love him, even when he's old enough to ask why." I sank onto the floor, holding the photo. For the first time, I noticed how peaceful the little image looked. Tiny hands, a round head, oblivious to everything I'd done. Maya came over that night when I told her what happened. She listened quietly, tears in her eyes. "He's right," she said finally. "He's not doing this to punish you. He's doing it because you left him no other way to live." I snapped, asking her if she thought I deserved this. She didn't answer at first. Then she said softly, "You don't deserve it, but you caused it." After she left, I walked into the nursery and sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened boxes and the faint smell of fresh paint. I stared at the walls we'd meant to finish together. It was quiet, not peaceful, just empty. And as I sat there, clutching that photo, I realized Adam had achieved exactly what I never could. He'd found control without cruelty, power without noise. His revenge wasn't in what he took. It was in what he refused to give back. The court hearing was quick, almost too quick for something that had destroyed an entire life. I'd imagined drama, shouting, last-minute pleas, something cinematic that might make people understand me. Instead, it was quiet, procedural, merciless in its calm. The judge spoke in short sentences, reading from neatly typed documents that turned my marriage into case numbers and legal phrases. Adam sat across the room, composed, his lawyer flipping through pages while I tried to breathe. The judge reviewed the evidence, paternity results, financial records, witness statements, my own text messages. Each detail cut deeper because they all came from me. I had written my own confession long before I ever stood in that courtroom. My lawyer whispered something about emotional context and mitigating circumstances, but it didn't matter. The truth was too clear, too measurable. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood, hands trembling. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," I said, my voice barely steady. "I made mistakes, but I was trying to hold my family together. I thought if I kept things calm, if I just pretended long enough, it would fix itself." The words sounded weak even to me. The judge nodded politely, wrote something down, and said, "Thank you." That was all. Then it was Adam's turn. He stood slowly, buttoning his jacket, his tone quiet but steady. "Your Honor," he said, "this isn't about revenge. I just want to raise a child in truth. I don't want anger to be the lesson they grow up with." His voice didn't shake once. I wanted him to look at me, to show even a flicker of the man who used to love me. But he didn't. He was already gone in every way that mattered. When the verdict came, it was simple. Custody to Adam Ward. Limited visitation for the mother, pending review. Property division in accordance with financial contributions. The words washed over me like cold water. The gavel came down once, and just like that, everything was finished. Evelyn was there, sitting behind Adam. She reached out and squeezed his hand when it was over. I caught her looking at me once, not cruelly, just with quiet disappointment, the kind of look that said she'd known this would happen all along. Maya sat on my side, crying quietly, but I couldn't cry with her. My body felt hollow, like there was nothing left inside to feel. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Someone must have leaked the story. Small-town gossip always found its way to headlines. I heard one of them call my name asking, "Do you regret lying about the baby?" I didn't answer. I kept walking, head down, one hand on my stomach. The air felt too sharp, too bright. Adam walked a few steps ahead, surrounded by lawyers and his mother. He didn't look back once. When I got home that evening, the apartment felt smaller than ever. The nursery door was half open, the pale blue paint catching the last bit of light from the window. I sat on the floor, next to the boxes of things I hadn't unpacked: tiny shoes, unopened toys, folded baby clothes. I pulled out the ultrasound photo again, the one Adam had left for me. It was crumpled from how many times I'd held it. The phone rang. It was Maya. She asked if I was okay. I said, yes, even though my voice cracked. She offered to come over, but I told her no. I need to sit with it, I said. I need to understand what I've done. She didn't argue. She just said, he still won't speak badly about you, you know. He told the judge you're not a bad person, just lost. Lost. That word stayed with me after she hung up. It sounded gentler than liar, but somehow worse. As the night grew darker, I realized Adam hadn't shouted once throughout any of this. He hadn't tried to humiliate me or make me suffer. He had simply removed me, cleanly, efficiently, from his life. That was his revenge. Peace. I walked into the kitchen and found another envelope on the counter. Inside was a short letter from his lawyer confirming the final judgment. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Adam. For the record, I'll always care for the child, but care and trust aren't the same thing. I sat down, clutching the letter until my hands hurt. The silence of the house pressed against me, thick and absolute. No more lies to juggle, no more stories to tell. Just truth, cold and still. For the first time in months, I didn't try to justify anything. I didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't blame. I just stared at the empty space where his things used to be and thought about how quiet justice really sounds when it finally arrives. And in that stillness, I realized the truth I'd spent so long avoiding. Adam hadn't destroyed me. I had done it myself, one lie at a time, until there was nothing left for him to take. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.